It's pretty disheartening to know that we are well over 100 full seasons into the existence of the NFL, and we still do not have an established term for what a fucking catch is. That's right, I'm whining because I picked the Ravens to beat the Steelers, and the Ravens got robbed of a touchdown. We'll get into that shortly. And I'm seeing too many rage baiters and stupid people around the internet saying that he didn't have a third foot down, therefore it's not a complete catch. When have you ever heard in the entirety of fucking football, not just the NFL, any football league ever, where you have to have 3 feet down for it to be an official catch? It's unheard of. As for my record this week, I don't want to talk about it. But let's just hurry up and get into these games already because we have quite a bit to unpack. First up, you got a game that I'm sure nobody really wanted to see on Thursday Night Football: Atlanta Falcons versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Last week, the Falcons got washed and dried by the Seattle Seahawks, ending their hopes at a playoff run. And it's a shame because the Falcons had such a fascinating start to the season this year, but an even more fascinating collapse into irrelevancy once again midway through the season. But most fascinatingly, the Buccaneers somehow managed to lose to the Saints at home. A shame as well because the Buccaneers also had a great start to their season this year. And whereas they might not be collapsing as hard as the Falcons are, they're not looking remotely as good as they were at the start of the season by any means. But despite the disappointments, I suppose it's nothing surprising. I got the Buccaneers winning this one. Next, you got the Arizona Cardinals versus the Houston Texans. Houston managed to take down the Chiefs thanks to their top-tier defense and taking advantage of the Chiefs' mishaps that game, which there was a lot of. And the Texans' defense continues to look better and better as the season goes on. Meanwhile, the Cardinals, well, you already know how it is with them. I got the Texans winning here. Next, you got a rematch between the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots. The Patriots are still on their winning streak of, I think it's 10. I don't even remember how many it was. That's how long their winning streak is. But last week, they came off of a peaceful bye week, so we'll see if the bye week ends up breaking their stride they got going. Meanwhile, the Bills had just came off of a clutch victory against the Cincinnati Bengals. Buffalo was down for the most part of the game, and you could argue that the game was handed to them in the final minutes of it, as their comeback was aided dearly by Bengals turnovers. It was pretty bad. Last time these teams faced, the Patriots took down the Bills in Buffalo, and that was either the first or second win to start the Patriots' long winning streak that is still active. This is tough because with how good the Patriots are already doing and their previous win against the Bills, and this is being played in Foxborough, do we really see the Bills getting swept by the Patriots this year? I personally am going to go with yes. Even though the Patriots' win streak consists largely of fodder, having swept the Bills amongst that win streak would make them look much more intimidating. And again, they're doing everything right. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Bills win this one, but I'm going to go with the Patriots to go for the sweep in 2025. Next, you got the Cleveland Browns versus the Chicago Bears. The Browns just lost a thriller matchup versus the Titans. Yes, the Browns and Titans had a pretty fucking entertaining matchup. But the Browns did end up losing, and a lot of people are blaming the questionable decisions made towards the end of the game regarding some 2-point conversion attempts following the final touchdowns. Fact of the matter is, the Browns came up short, and now their playoff hopes have come to an end as well. But on the bright side, Shedeur Sanders had his best game so far, throwing for over 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. By no means was it perfect, but it was absolutely promising. It was a great game by him. But a rare defensive blunder by the Browns cost them the game. Defense didn't seem to have shown up. They'll be taking on the Bears, whose streak just came to an end by the Green Bay Packers in a very close game. But despite the loss, I don't think the Bears need to panic. Their team still looks electric as hell. And they're still well in the playoff race, so there's really nothing to be concerned about. Especially for a team where all you really want to see this year is improvement. It doesn't have to mean you make the playoffs or do good in it. But I'm going to pick Chicago to win this one. I think they're just a much better team than the Browns. If the Bears do lose to the Browns, then, you have some concern there. The Bears have a pretty tough schedule to close out the regular season, the Browns being the easiest opponent they have left, so they're absolutely going to need this victory here. And I think they'll get it. Next, you got a rematch between the Baltimore Ravens and Cincinnati Bengals. These two teams last played on Thanksgiving just a couple of weeks ago, where the Bengals destroyed the Ravens with the help of some repeated Ravens turnovers. But Cincinnati themselves had a turnover problem in their last game against the Bills, so that's something you want to keep in mind when, predicting or thinking about this game here. The Ravens also lost their last game to the Steelers. I already mentioned the robbery on a touchdown that was called back because a third step wasn't taken. I didn't know that was a thing. It wouldn't have been the game-winning touchdown or anything, but it was deep in the fourth quarter, and that would have greatly helped the Ravens had it counted. And I kind of feel bad for Isaiah Likely. He seems to be the guy that constantly gets robbed the most. I think this is the third time I can count where he has been snubbed of a touchdown or a big play in the last 2 seasons. But anyway, this is a hard game to predict because these two teams just love beating each other up at random. But Lamar Jackson does love to go crazy and weave all kinds of magic when he plays in Cincinnati, which he will be this week. I'm gonna try my luck with the Ravens this time. I think they'll win this game. I wouldn't be surprised if they got swept by the Bengals this year, but I don't really see it happening. Next up, the Jacksonville Jaguars will be defending against the most consistent team in all of North American sports. The Jets are so consistent that as of last week, they are officially on a 15-year streak of missing the playoffs, the longest active streak among any of the major 4 sports leagues in North America. Meanwhile, the Jaguars just took down the once hot Indianapolis Colts. And fortunately for Jacksonville, they're starting to look like a little bit of a threat again. How long will they keep this up? That's the big question that I do not have the answers to. But they are taking on the New York Jets, so they should be able to keep this winning streak going. Next, you got the LA Justin Herbert versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Justin Herbert unsurprisingly carried the Chargers to yet another victory, this time over the Philadelphia Eagles in an overtime victory, joining the Dallas Cowboys in eliminating both of the defending conference champions. Props to you both. Meanwhile, the Chiefs played horrifically against the Texans defense, losing to Houston and officially ending their decade-long streak of running the AFC West. Now, this doesn't mean the Chiefs are out of playoff contention, but it is looking worse and worse for them as the weeks go on. The Chiefs have to win out here if they want to stay alive. And fortunately for them, they're going against the Chargers, and they've kind of owned the Chargers since they've had Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. But they did lose to the Chargers in week 1 earlier in the season, and the Chiefs, they haven't looked much better or worse since that game. These two teams look about the same. I'm really about to pick the Chargers to sweep the Chiefs. I didn't think the year would come this quickly. Wow. Yeah, I got the LA Chargers beating the Chiefs for the second time and potentially knocking them out of playoff contention. Next, you got the Washington Redskins versus the New York Giants. So, first of all, the Redskins are now out of playoff contention. But not only did they lose their playoff hopes, they lost Zach Ertz to a brutal injury, and they also lost Jaden Daniels again. Because for some reason, they decided to play him before he was fully recovered from that gruesome arm injury that he got against Seattle only a few weeks ago. And he would just happen to hurt that same arm against the Vikings, which, by the way, the Redskins did not put up any points against. So 2 beat up and eliminated NFC East teams just going at it for fun, essentially. I guess I'll pick the Giants to win this one. For no good reason in particular, other than the Redskins are just a little too rattled right now. Next up, you got the Vegas Raiders versus the Philly Cheesesteaks. The Raiders lost to the Broncos, unsurprisingly. Nothing much else to say there. But the Philadelphia Eagles continue to look shittier than the city they represent. Jalen Hurts had arguably the worst performance in his entire football career, becoming the first player this century to turn the ball over twice in one play. The man threw 4 interceptions, one of them at the end of overtime, literally killing the game for the Eagles. Now all of a sudden Philadelphia is 8-6 with the Cowboys right behind them. The NFL gods are throwing up an alley-oop for the Cowboys. Remember what I said a few months ago, guys, that there hasn't been any repeat winners in the NFC East in over 20 years. Fortunately for the Eagles, though, they're taking on the Raiders now. Look, if the Eagles lose to the Raiders, just go ahead and rule them as eliminated from playoff contention right then and there. The postseason has no room for teams that lose to the Raiders, okay? But I do have Philadelphia winning this one. It's about as easy as a win it gets. I don't know what else is going to help uplift them. Next, the Green Bay Packers will be playing the Broncos in Denver. The Packers just defeated the red-hot Chicago Bears. Now they got to take on a red-hot Denver Broncos. But the Broncos are a different kind of hot. They're only playing as good as their opponents. So one thing's for sure. One thing I'm 200% sure on is that this is going to be a close game, ending within one possession. Somebody's got to breach that Broncos defense. The question is, are the Packers the answer? And in my opinion, I don't think so. Asking a young Packers team that seemingly loses at any random point to take down a red-hot Broncos team, penetrating their defense in Denver so they have the stamina disadvantage, is quite the tall order. There's absolutely potential for Green Bay to win here, but I feel like the Broncos are going to keep their streak going and beat the Packers in Denver. Next, you got the Detroit Lions versus the LA Rams. Battle of the Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff trade. Now, despite the potential for this being a really great game, I actually don't have a whole lot to say here. Two of the finest teams in the NFC, and really in the NFL as a whole, coming off of some relatively easy wins, about to go at it with each other. This game could go either way, but I'm going to give the slight edge to the Lions, not just because I want the Rams to lose, but I just feel like the Lions have a level of explosiveness to them that the Rams aren't the best at handling. And the Lions really need this win more in order to get into the playoff picture because they've been in the hunt for quite some time now. Close game that the Rams could very much win, but I'm going with Detroit to take this one. Next, you got the Carolina Panthers versus the New Orleans Saints. The last time we seen both these teams on the field, they pulled off upset victories against top dog teams, with the Carolina Panthers beating the Rams 2 weeks ago before their bye week, and the Saints somehow taking down the Buccaneers. Now, despite their out-of-nowhere upsets, that doesn't change the fact that this game's pointless and will not be entertaining. I'm just going to pick the Panthers to win. Alrighty, Indianapolis Colts versus the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks got yet another easy fucking win, this time over the Falcons. They're 10-3, and I still cannot look at them like an elite team. I still see a first-round fucking exit when I look at this dumb-ass logo. Let me chill. The logo's kind of cool. They're going home to Seattle as they await the Colts, who are in a very interesting situation right now. So first of all, the Colts have now lost 3 in a row, with the most recent one coming to the Jaguars. Already really concerning if you're the Colts because you were just the 1 seed and now all of a sudden you're damn near out of the playoff picture. So panic is setting in, obviously. And then they also lost Indiana Jones. Daniel Jones out for the remainder of the season. Big loss for Indianapolis. So with Daniel Jones now out and Anthony Richardson still injured, what do the Colts do? They reach into the retirement home and pull out Phillip Rivers, baby. 44-year-old Phillip fucking Rivers is coming back to the NFL after a 5-year retirement. And we're going to see what he does with this panicking Colts team. Now, I'll be honest. I don't think this makes the Colts worse, but I don't think this makes them better either. Like, this isn't Tom Brady, okay? 44-year-old anybody isn't going to succeed, or at least not to deep playoff run caliber on a team like the Colts. A team that simply is exceeding expectations. They're not quite elite or anything like that. They're just looking better than what we all thought they would be. But the Colts are not a fantastic team or anything like that. But with that, I don't see a whole lot of improvement coming from this signing of Phillip Rivers. Unless Rivers gets destroyed early in the game, forcing the Colts to have to use 4th string QBs and wide receivers to throw the ball, I unfortunately am not going to be able to say the Seahawks get a free win, but it's not exactly a great win either. It would just be a win. But let me stop coping. I got Seattle winning this one. Next, the Tennessee Titans will be taking on the 49ers. The last time these two teams were on the field, they both beat the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland. The 49ers are coming off of their late bye week. Meanwhile, the Titans won a thriller against the Browns. Like I said, as crazy as that sounds, it was a great game that the Titans ended up sneaking away with. Now, the only real question is, are the Titans going to carry some of that electric energy over to this game against San Francisco? Because if not, they're not winning this game here. But whatever Tennessee decides to bring to the field this week, if the 49ers, for any reason, lose this game, all hope and faith for them to make any type of significant run this season, it will be shattered. So this should be an easy slam dunk victory for the 49ers. On Sunday Night Football, the Minnesota Vikings will be playing the Cowboys in Dallas. The Cowboys' winning streak came to an end against the Lions on Thursday, but even more scary, CeeDee Lamb suffered a pretty bad head injury in the middle of that game, and at the time of recording, he is questionable to play against the Vikings. But speaking of the Vikings playing injured teams, the Vikings took down a fucking battered Washington Redskins team. Like, what do you want, credit? Hell no. Vikings are still horrible. But even if CeeDee Lamb doesn't play this game, the Cowboys could, would, and should win this game because they're just the better team. Talent-wise, the Vikings don't have much on them. The Cowboys trump the Vikings in most of the major stats. Home field advantage, and the Vikings just not looking like a very clean offense at all in these past few months. The Cowboys should win this game. And finally, on Monday Night Football, the Dolphins will be playing the Steelers in Pittsburgh. I'm not gonna lie, at the time of recording, I completely forgot to do some research on this game, so I don't really have a whole lot of info to go off of here. I do know the Steelers just beat the Ravens, and as I said, kind of got bailed out on that no-call touchdown. But their defense was ruthless throughout that game against the Ravens at least, so there's that at least, and they're taking on a mediocre Dolphins team. But the Steelers themselves are pretty fucking mid, so it's like, I don't know who to predict here. Actually, no, the Steelers should win. Even though they're inconsistent, they're a better team than the Dolphins. They should win this game, especially if they want to get into the playoffs and hold on to the division title. This Pittsburgh, you guys better... Come on, stop. I'm just so sick of seeing all these teams losing games they shouldn't be losing. That used to be exclusive to just a handful of franchises. There only used to be, some teams that would do that occasionally. That's all this season's been. Teams losing games they shouldn't have fucking lost. That's why it's so hard to predict these goddamn games.